Aloha, everyone, and welcome back to Alaka'i, the podcast. I'm your host, Emmie Siebert, along with my co-host,
Mutia, Parasduhita. Welcome back, guys.
Well, today we've got Wyatt Hunter sitting with us. Going to talk about some energy policy.
Absolutely.
I have no idea what that is, but we're excited. So, things about Wyatt. He's a senior here at BYU-H. He's a political science major, and he's from Colorado. What part of Colorado?
I'm from Pueblo, Colorado.
Pueblo, nice. My family lives in Larkspur. Right now. Have you ever even heard of that?
Honestly, surprisingly, no. I know a lot of Colorado,
It's
but like I'm more to the
close
south.
Castle Rock.
Oh yeah, that's
It's
a little bit more north.
right
Yeah.
side. If you've ever been to like the Ren Fest,
Oh wait, I think.
that's where that is.
Hey, that's pretty cool.
I just told the whole world where my family lives, so it's a little too specific. But anyways, yes, Wyatt, we are excited to have you.
Yeah.
So
glad to
getting
be
right
here.
into it, for all of our listeners, aka Emmie, probably Mutia too, I would assume,
I'm learning too.
who have no idea what energy policy means. Can you just define what that is and why you're passionate about it?
Absolutely. As a brief disclaimer, I'm not necessarily like a certified expert in this. You know, I'm only like an undergrad in my senior year, but
Just an undergrad.
yeah, just
Come
an
on.
Hey, that's
hey.
But energy policy is essentially either like the decision making or systems that are involved in how we produce energy, how we distribute it, and how it is utilized or consumed.
Okay.
So it's a pretty broad field, like when it comes down
Right.
to it, and it's really like in the background of just everyday life for the average person. So, you know,
Yeah, it's probably just like an afterthought for me. Like,
Yeah.
you know,
we
didn't think
flip the
about
light
it.
switch and lights come on, you know, and we don't really think much of it until, you know, occasionally there's those power outages. And then suddenly energy policy and the infrastructure that goes into that is like a little bit more on our minds. But like other than that, it's usually in the background.
Yeah, I think it is a really nice topic to be brought up because I don't know whatever it is about it, but I do know that every single semester we have EIL student and then they talk about energy turbine and all of the energy sources. So this is gonna be a good topic for their research too.
Absolutely.
Anyway, what is the story behind you get into it?
Absolutely. For years, going back to like high school and maybe even before that, you know, I love the sciences, and I was not really the greatest at math per se. In fact, I originally started here as like trying to go into math because I like the science of, you know,
The
energy.
science of math.
Yeah, yeah. Not the science of math. I couldn't.
Oh, you
couldn't
said you don't like math. Like math.
I'm not great at it, you know.
Oh, got it.
And
Okay.
so that's
Well, me
kinda-
too. There you go.
Oh, there we go. I'm not great at math, and you know, I thought that maybe like I could just like kind of muscle through it so that I could do something science related, maybe be an
Oh.
engineer.
Okay.
But I just kind of hit a brick wall in math, and I found that like I like learning about it. I like the conceptual side of it, and like how that impacts like politics and like the like everyday life essentially. And so I would research it, you know, conceptually, you know, follow along the developments and the new technology that other people were doing and like working really hard at. But when I got here, I veered more into political science, and I've been kind of looking at both, like trying to understand the science of it from as best a perspective as I can, and then diving into the political science on how that decision making is plays out.
Okay.
So
So that's how you would, in your future, you want to use your political science degree to get into more energy and things, or like, what do you want to? How does political science affect?
yeah, whether I'm still trying to figure out whether I want to approach this from like a law perspective or
got it.
possibly political advising. I think this is important to not necessarily a partisan way of looking at things. It's not necessarily completely about sides, but like this is something that just impacts everybody.
Right.
So I think I'd eventually want to, whether from policymaking or just simple law practice, you know, like advising, you know, like utility companies and or other people, you know, on how the like kind of just like bring this down to a very, very easy to understand level for people, you know.
That's nice for people like myself.
Well, yeah.
That's great.
No, it's all good.
Okay, let's try to talk about the types of energy itself. So, based on my knowledge, we have like coal, natural gas, and we have the renewable one, something like that. Can you talk a little bit more about it?
Like maybe what the differences between the different energy sources are.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. The important thing to remember with energy sources is that every single one of them has benefits and drawbacks. There are times, like there are certain areas that they excel in and other areas where you're really going to struggle to come to terms with like the difficulties that they have. And essentially, the important things that we kind of gauge energy by is how affordable is it? You know, like
Right.
how cheap is this energy for the average consumer? How reliable is it? And how does it fit into the very unique geography of the area that you're trying to put this in? So, like, for instance, like Hawaii is kind of a unique place. It doesn't have the sprawling plains of like Wyoming, you know, land here is very valuable. And so that's why like there's certain things that are kind of like you have to take into account here in Hawaii. So for instance, like Hawaii has for most of its history run off of like a coal/natural gas generator system.
Okay.
You know, just like the nice thing about coal and natural gas is that it's very reliable, you know, like whether it's raining or, you know, whether it's sunny or dark out, you know, it will keep running, like barring any catastrophic, you know, like damage to the plant.
Right.
But the drawback is that burning coal and natural gas emits carbon. So in the terms of like climate change, that's like not really good.
Yeah, major pollution.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's not great. And especially coal, there's been reports from like the World Health Organization that like coal burning causes complications like in the surrounding area from its pollutants in terms of like lung issues and other like, you know, especially in like development stages of life for like children and stuff like that. It can have impacts at a large scale.
Wow, that seems awful. Like,
Yeah.
that just seems like there's nothing good about it, honestly.
Yeah.
Probably just
yeah,
like,
yeah.
is it just cheaper? Is that why?
Yeah, affordability is usually pretty good with coal. Pretty available. You can like bring it into wherever it needs to go, you know, whether by
It's
ship
like
or
accessible. Yeah.
yeah. And you know, for years it was like a big part of the Industrial Revolution when we didn't really know about that many other energy
Right.
sources. It was just one of the most easily accessible ones
Yeah.
originally. But now the world's kind of coming to terms with the fact that coal is not necessarily an ideal energy source.
Yeah, just for like health reasons and
Yeah. Climate reasons
right.
and, you know, like it's, yeah, not ideal.
Right, got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, with that being said, probably not a lot of people using the coal energy right now.
Yeah.
But if we drive up the Kamehameha Highway or toward the Kahuku side, we will see the windmills over there. Is there going to be like a big problem with the society here because some of the lands are sacred?
Oh, yeah.
So
Absolutely.
what kind of problem that will appear if we insert this kind of energy to the land?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a really important issue, especially around here, because like we said, Hawaii doesn't have vast amounts of easily developed land. And even the land that isn't developed, it's meant to be preserved because it's sacred. It means a lot to the people around here. And so the issue is that renewable energy, whether it's wind or solar, it is very land intensive. You can kind of get around that, for instance, with solar by putting it on rooftops.
Right.
So you're not necessarily like trying to build it over new land, but essentially the issue is we're trying to build utility scale developments, which means like
What does that mean? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. To explain, utility scale power plants are ones that are meant to provide massive amounts of power from a very specific area that can be turned on or off at will. So that means we're not talking about a single wind turbine or a couple solar panels on somebody's rooftop. We're talking about hundreds of acres dedicated to the generation of energy.
The system.
Okay.
And so the issue is that like you can't do that over in Honolulu or in Kaneohe, you know?
Right.
Like that, like it's been put up here on the North Shore, and much to the dismay of a lot of locals around here, because it's a big change, you know, both in like how the land is used around here, and as you're driving up at the North Shore, every time you're going to see those massive wind turbines, even if it is for a good cause, you know, like wind energy and solar energy generally are very cheap, like affordable energy sources because they're renewable, you know, and there's been a lot of great technology developed in that. But there is the drawback that, especially here, it is a challenge to make them work.
Right. It's a challenge to make them work just because of the amount of land it takes to do it and the connection to the land and the people.
Yeah, well, this has been an issue not just here, but like across the country, where there are cities that need a lot of energy, right?
Yeah.
Like Honolulu or other like very concentrated populations draw in a lot of energy. And that's just, that's just how, the modern world is kind of structured. The issue is that if we're going to go full renewables, which is what a lot of policymakers are talking about nowadays, they want to go full wind, full solar. That those massive utility scale solar plants and wind plants aren't developed in the cities. They're developed out in the countryside.
Right.
Like if you drive like down near my house in like Pueblo, Colorado, you drive up to the mountains, up near like Rye and Walsenburg and stuff like that. And when you look out to the horizon at night, you see just massive rows of blinking red lights. Wind turbines literally fill half the horizon in southern Colorado.
Whoa.
So understandably, the locals around there, it's a much less rural. It's a much more rural area, and so there's not like a ton of voters down there. The cities don't have to necessarily consider the will of like the local voters.
Of what? Yeah, who it's a.
Exactly, but they're the ones that are actually being impacted by these massive developments. And this isn't to say that they shouldn't happen at all. I'm saying like wind and solar are great energy sources, honestly. But as we've seen here, and as we've seen like in lots of places across the country, it is really upsetting when these massive developments happen, especially when it feels like you don't get any say in it.
Yeah.
So
when these things, is there an issue of other issues regarding how much space it takes to put these things? Like, I don't know if like animals used to be on that land, or like does it affect the environment? Like, are there negative impacts to the environment?
Like indigenous birds here, if we plant like a wind
Right.
turbine, something like that, what's gonna happen with them?
Is that a huge issue, or?
Yes, it's something that definitely has to be taken into consideration, especially here because like there's a lot of areas across like the mainland United States that don't have as like concentrated bird populations, and those bird populations are endemic. They're all over the place, and so it's not a huge deal.
Is that what endemic means?
I think honestly, like I use the word sometimes. I don't know.
It's just localized here. They're not
they're
migrated anywhere.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, it's like, but especially here, wind turbines are responsible for a degree of bird kill. Bird strike, wherever they're at. And I was talking about this with someone, and I've heard this discussed. Some people, especially like environmentalists or activists, would argue that, like, well, cats kill hundreds of millions of birds every year. Buildings, glass windows are responsible for killing hundreds of millions of birds every year. So it shouldn't be that big of a deal if wind turbines are developed in a few places, if it means saving the world from climate change. The issue with that, as far as I've been able to tell, and admittedly, like, I'm still trying to like fully like understand this issue, but when it comes to birds, like cats will kill like little sparrows, swallows, tiny little, birds. They don't kill birds of prey like falcons, eagles, large birds that are, like birds of prey. Wind turbines do kill those in disproportionate numbers because of the way that like those wind turbines are structured.
Right.
Large birds are like higher altitude hunters, and so they'll get more impacted by wind turbines than other things. So it's important to like understand like the nuance here in that, yes, lots of birds die every year to many things, and climate change is impacting a lot of birds. But especially here in Hawaii, where there's like indigenous birds that are very specifically localized on mountains, it does cause an impact, like a very, very distinct impact that like shouldn't be brushed under the rug.
Man, this is like, that has got to be the hardest choice, because it's like lesser of two evils, because both of those problems really impact the environment in general. Like one is like major health, climate that's like
very
gnarly.
Severe.
But also just, I mean, I don't know which one's better. Like, I don't even, I guess like renewable energy probably is just the way to go, but it's like you have to accept all of those negative impacts, and especially when there's like kind of spiritual ties to the land, or how it impacts animals, the environment, and that's just that's a problem.
The nice thing is that luckily we're figuring out ways to try and balance things and use new technology. Like, for instance, the Hawaiian electric company is making a new natural gas powered plant, but one that is specifically designed to minimize the amount of carbon that it outputs.
Okay.
Because like just a few months ago, I think they decommissioned the old coal power plant in Honolulu, and so they're going to be building this new one. At least is the proposal, and it is something that will emit like a fraction of the CO2 and the pollutants that coal outputs.
Like coals in it. Okay.
And it has the added benefit that natural gas, well, it still has the issue that it is not renewable. So, it's a very finite resource, but it still maintains a degree of affordability and consistency. So,
there's a step in the right direction.
Hey, I think that people really want energy to be produced in a good, reliable, clean way.
Right.
But there's a lot of trade-offs that you have to take into account. Like, for instance, if we tried to switch tomorrow to all wind turbines and solar panels, the issue is that when we need electricity, like for these microphones, for lights in the studio, the wind isn't always blowing and the sun isn't always shining.
Right. Yeah.
So there you go.
Well, they're trying to figure out, things like there was a massive battery farm built just over, I think it's Kapolei Energy Systems that built one here. Massive battery farm to try and store the energy from wind and solar and provide more grid reliability.
Right.
It's awesome, But a few weeks ago, during those massive rainstorms at the beginning of January, there was a rolling out power outage because there were several days of cloudiness. And so the battery farm wasn't able to fully fill up.
Right.
Oh.
Just drawbacks. Essentially the main point I want to put out there for everyone listening to this is that as much as we want to be a proponent for one energy source or another, there's drawbacks that are actually quite hard to deal with sometimes. So
I really agree with that because this talk itself,
yeah,
we are discussing about which one is better, which one better for you. But at the same time, why not we have everything and then when this one is effective, we use this one. But when this one is more effective, we just leave the previous one.
Yeah.
Right.
And I attended one of the university plan.
Yeah.
In the upcoming years, I don't know what year it is going to be. I cannot remember. But anyway, they are planning to put solar panel to run the whole university.
Yeah.
Oh.
So what do you feel about that? What do you think?
Yeah. I think solar is great, honestly. And, the way that the university's done it seems to be really well put together, When you put solar panels over the parking spaces,
Right.
most students can see, or other areas like that, it makes use of a huge flat space that's already been developed, and prevents just those big urban heat sinks, from all the asphalt, all that concrete,
Yeah.
And it's a great energy source. For the most part, it's way cheaper than a lot of other energy sources out there. And so, I don't know. I need to look at the university plan to understand how it works, and not necessarily to tell them what to do, but just to understand it.
Let me tell you guys a thing or two.
Not here to tell them how to do their job,
Yeah.
but
But if you could choose,
Yeah.
would you like to be the part of the project? Because,
I definitely want to understand it because it's something that obviously impacts all of Laie and all of the North
Right.
Shore. So I would wonder if I know the university has generators for the times when there are blackouts, and I think it's really smart, honestly. It's great to have. It adds
We've
to the
had to
reliability.
use those quite a bit.
Honestly, yeah. Can't tell you how many times my house is out of power off campus, and then I have to drive to
Yeah,
campus,
we
and they
had
have
a lot of that.
they flip on the generators, and I'm like, oh, saved.
Saved.
There we
yes.
go. So I don't know. I wonder if the university has battery systems for the solar for when it, obviously the sun stops shining or it's cloudy or stuff like that. I don't know. Even if it's just to make us less reliant on,
Weather.
yeah, weather, or anything like that, increase the reliability. So
Right.
yeah.
So with those power outages, that we had talked a little bit about that, but would you be able to share your thoughts on that? Honestly, there's literally the power goes out seriously all the time.
Yeah. Well, honestly, yeah.
So did at least maybe the most recent power outages, did that have to do with the battery farm that you were mentioning, or do you know why
Yeah.
is this happening?
Absolutely. In fact, I think it was January 9th that the power outage, the big blackouts happened.
Yeah.
That was a really interesting case study in energy because essentially the coal power plant was offline. So you have just this smaller natural gas plant with a couple generators going.
Okay.
And well, there was a combination of things that happened. One, there was 2 big generators at the natural gas plant, and they both were flooded and had issues like during the rainstorm. One of them was completely flooded. One of them was still working, but the line that was connecting it to the energy grid, it was damaged. So those 2 came offline. So it was obviously a very severe storm to begin with. Like, it wasn't just a matter of like, oh, if only we were doing more of one or the other. But simultaneously, days of cloudiness and rain and storms like meant that the battery wasn't full. So we begin to see kind of the issue here. For the most part, but like this kind of raises a problem that we're kind of beginning to face with renewable energy that can't just be solved as easy as like putting up more solar and wind. Battery systems are big, they're expensive, and with the Maui fires, for instance, recently we found how big of a hazard it is to try and clean up damaged batteries. Like I had a friend who was over like helping with the Maui like fire cleanups, and he explained how they had to have an entire specialized hazardous crew division cleaning up the different battery packs that were found, whether home battery packs, cars, even something as simple as laptops. These things are very dangerous.
So battery packs. I was just thinking of, I don't know what I was envisioning when talking about battery packs or just battery plants in general. Like just batteries or like what are battery
What are
packs?
those like? Yeah, that's a great question, honestly. Well, you can have little home batteries or like car batteries. You know,
like we're talking about like literal batteries here.
So if you want a utility scale battery farm, you're talking about shipping container sized, like massive lithium ion batteries. These things are huge,
right? That have like a plus side and a negative side.
Essentially, in a complicated roundabout way, it was scaled up huge. You know, it's massive. These things are huge.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and those things are in like huge plants, and so that's like is insane to even How do you can't dispose? Like, how does that?
Well.
Because I feel like natural gas is like, oh, that's going to be bad for the environment because like things that it emits. But you can't, even with renewable energy, with these huge battery things, that's also just a major negative for the environment because you can't dispose of these. Like how can you dispose of them? How did they do it in Maui?
So I don't know. I don't think that any of these massive battery packs were damaged over in Maui. It was more like within the community.
Okay.
The battery packs were kind of made in a similar style. Most batteries that we use today are lithium ion based. And so, you know, similar construction, but like scaled up large to like these massive like shipping container size utility ones. But over in Maui, even the small ones that are on like your average Tesla or hybrid or other things like that, the issue with battery packs is the fires that can happen with them are very, very difficult to put out. For instance, you know like how like counterintuitive it is to like try and put out like an oil fire, like a grease fire?
Yeah.
You should not put water on it,
Don't put water on it. Rule number 1.
Yeah, exactly. You're supposed to smother it.
Right.
The problem with battery fires is that smothering it does nothing. Like, because the energy's within the battery, right? It's storing like,
oh my god,
sometimes like dozens and dozens and dozens of like, well, at least like on the larger scale, like megawatts of power, you know? And so how do you put that out? It's a very, very big, you know, challenge. And so they came up with very specific methods to try and dispose of them, but it drew out the, you know, cleanup times by like, I don't know, a significant portion from what I remember reading. Yeah. So, you know, the issue with renewables is that you have to find a place to store it. That's as simple as that. And the safety keeps getting better with these battery packs.
Okay.
You know, that's the nice thing about it. It's a newer technology and the price keeps coming down and safety keeps getting better. So
we're in the right direction.
We're going in the right direction, you know, exactly. And like, I think that we do need more renewables. I just want to see that done in a way that like allows local communities to have the input that is necessary to make sure that it's done in a good way, that it's done safely. So, yeah.
Nice. Well, that's a lot of information to
oh my gosh,
immersion.
no, I'm so fascinated. Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, if someone would like to learn more about it, what source do you normally go to?
That's a great question. Honestly, there's a lot of different ways you can try and learn about this. Oftentimes what people will hear about this from is the news, you know, which oftentimes is very, very, very strong opinions on
it depends on which one you listen to.
Well, exactly. Like you listen to one or the other. And I don't recommend listening to just one news source to understand energy policy. Because like we said, there's drawbacks for any source of energy.
Right.
So I recommend that if people want to learn more about this, like Hawaii Electric has a great website, where you can learn about the recent proposal for like the newer, like cleaner natural gas plant, and there are other ways that they're trying to improve the grid here. There are constantly like new developments happening, in energy policy, and like, so I don't know. I learned about it generally from whether it's like new journals that are putting them out, like Nature magazine or like other like, well, usually more like physics oriented or like energy oriented stuff. But honestly, like a lot of what I've learned has just been like slowly paying attention to it and trying to draw from many sources over time. So the average person, it's just good to be aware of it and try not to get like too sucked into one viewpoint, opinion or another. So there is actually a very good channel on YouTube called the Illinois Energy Professor. He's a professor at the University of Illinois who explains in detail, very impartially, the benefits and cons of different energy sources, like nuclear, for instance. Like, he focuses a lot on nuclear power, but also, he explains how like coal power plants, wind turbines, any of that works, And so if people want to really understand how their grid works and why the lights turn on in the morning when, you're getting up for work, he's a really great source to turn to.
What was his name again?
Illinois Energy Professor.
Oh,
yeah,
that's not his name. Illinois Energy
Professor.
That's
the name of his YouTube channel. I don't know what his name is, actually.
Yeah, that's okay. That's all we need, the YouTube channel.
That's absolutely. So cool.
Well, is there anything else that you would add before, especially for our listeners, before we wrap up?
Absolutely. This is something that's going to keep impacting, daily life for people more and more. Because right now the U.S. is trying to go through an energy transition away from carbon emitting sources.
Right.
It's going to come up, and oftentimes like hearing about it from the outside, like I remember when I first started hearing about this, I'm like, I don't understand it. I don't know how it works. I should just like focus on other things. And I think that's totally fine, but it is something that, because it's going to have more impacts, if you really want to understand it, there's great sources out there. And it's not something you don't need to understand all the science behind it. You don't need to understand all of like the complex physics. I suck at math. But this is something that, I've had a lot of fun trying to research, trying to like understand over the years. And, the more that we can learn about this as like, community members, voters and things like that, the more that we can make good informed decisions, And so oftentimes at the surface level of issues like this can seem really black and white. Carbon emitting, non-carbon emitting, or reliable versus unreliable. And oftentimes beneath the surface, and I imagine this is the case with a lot of other issues that I don't know that much about, it's oftentimes a lot more complicated. So it's good if you feel like it's, really like simple answers, simple solutions. It's good to try and like peer a little deeper and try and figure out what this is, what's really fully going on. So
great advice.
Yeah, I don't know. It's something that I think the average person can like get into pretty, like it's not beyond normal people.
Right.
So
especially since we live in it.
Yeah, it's all around
really
us.
Impacts us. It's a direct impact thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. All right, Wyatt, thank you so much for sharing with us. I think it's gonna be really useful, especially for people like me. I become more aware about, hey, storing your electricity is not easy.
Oh yeah.
So I need to be more careful in using that and just not taking everything for granted.
Right.
Absolutely.
Well, for all of you, the listeners, I hope you learn a lot just like me and Emmie. And just like what Wyatt said, feel free to search on the internet and just don't listen to whatever it is like, oh, this is good, this is not. Just search on it yourself. Anyway, for all of you who have the same story or something that you would like to share with us in Alaka'i, just jump in, contact us at Alaka'i News, and we would like to feature with you. Well, have a good day, everyone.
Bye.
Take care.